Oh yeah, it's time once again for another project. This time, we're rebuilding Danny D. Okay, so obviously this is not Danny D. I have taken all the guts out because I had some issues trying to troubleshoot. And if you watched one of my other videos, you'll know that I actually had a bad memory controller on the Ryzen 7 1700X. So I broke everything back down. I was troubleshooting basically on a test bench, trying to go through and figure out exactly what my problem was. At first I thought it was the motherboard. Ended up being a memory controller on the CPU itself, which is a very odd and weird problem. But I found out about the same time I wasn't the only one having problems with Ryzen CPUs. Usually when a CPU fails, it fails. It doesn't do weird things and go part the way out, but this one did. So obviously that's not Danny D, that's Cooler Master Elite 110, but we are going to put some of the parts back in and we're going to change some other ones. Now there is one other part that I'm going to upgrade later that I'm not going to get to yet, but I haven't quite decided which direction I'm going to go with what's going to happen in the meantime. I'll probably stick with what was already in there, but we'll get to that in a moment. The motherboard is going to be the same thing. It's an MSI Gaming Plus AC. It's a B450. Solid motherboard, does a great job, did a great job. It's got the latest BIOS and everything on it, and it's going to go great with the processor that I picked out because that processor itself, AMD 5600. That 5600G, solid. It's already got graphics on it, but we're not going to use those graphics. And I am actually borrowing this back out of my sleeper build because I'm going to go ahead and put a 1600 in there. That 1600 will do fine for that build. That build will also have a 1650 Super in it. It's going to be more than fine and definitely still qualify as a sleeper. It's in a 12-year-old HP Pavilion, and the case is a 12-year-old case. So any step up for that will be fine. I'll eventually upgrade that CPU. We'll get around to that later. But for the time being, the 5600G is going to do just fine in there. For memory, we are going to go ahead because it's almost indestructible. G-Skill, the G-Skill Ripjaws 5, it's 16 megabytes, 3200 speed. It's going to do phenomenal. That stuff is pretty much indestructible. You can't tear that stuff up. 16 gig is going to be plenty fine for what we're doing, especially matched up with that 5600G. If I decide to go larger later, I can do that, but I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. Need some hard drive space. First thing we're going to do, Samsung 860 EVO. This was what was in it. There's a reason why I'm doing a 500 gig SATA instead of an NVMe drive, and that's because on the bottom of that motherboard is where the M.2 slot goes, and that is a pain in the tail to get to. And if I have to swap something out or if I want to change drives later, the Elite 110 allows me to look just on top. There's a little attachment that goes on top, sort of like a hard drive cage, where I can get to those drives very easily. Yes, I'm going to suffer a little bit with some performance, but the ease of getting to them in that small form factor is more than going to make up for it. I don't have to worry about trying to take that motherboard every time. Take the motherboard out every time. It's bad enough that I have to do that with a Noctua low profile cooler. I believe it's an LH9. That will be on the CPU. So that's going to provide me a little bit of height, plenty of cooling, does a great job, very quiet. And that thing can run rampant and still be very, very cool and very, very quiet. The other drive in there, it's going to be a 1 terabyte EX2. I've done a review on this one. This is a Team Group. It's a Team Group SSD. Not too bad. It's pretty decent. I'm also going to have an external drive, but for what I'm going to be using it for and what I'm going to be doing, this will be fine. This will be some backup files that will go on here. Maybe if I'm editing on the road, I don't need anything super fast when I'm on the road. I know I'm going to be inconvenienced because of the small size anyway, but it is what it is. And so between the 500 on the Samsung and the 1 terabyte here, I think I'm going to be just fine with being able to have swap files and taking care of things back and forth. And the coup de grace for everything, 3060 Ti. RTX 3060 Ti, it's made by EVGA. It is almost the same size as the 1660 that currently resides in there. Actually, it's a little bit thinner It's the same depth. I've already checked. It will fit in that box, and I shouldn't have any problems. So we are going to have a monster system with a 5600G and a 3060 Ti in there. This thing's going to giddy up and go. Currently, I've got a 600 watt EVGA power supply in there, the PSU, but it's a regular white label. It's an 80 plus white. And what I want to do eventually, I'm not going to be doing it yet, but what I will do in the future, and that will also give me some more room for cooling, is I'm going to go ahead and put an SFX power supply in there. But I figured this was ready to go. I'm going to go out of town this weekend, and it would be just as good a time as any to go ahead and get this thing started and up on the road. And I thought, you know what? It'd be really cool to have this in there with it. So we're going to start putting it together. After that, we'll do a few benchmarks, wrap everything up. But I don't know if it's going to be all done today. It might be done today and tomorrow or over the next couple of days. But follow me along because this ought to be interesting. Well, you know what all the parts are. Now you have to watch a crappy build montage. Sorry. Build montage done. Now we have to go ahead and hook it up and see if she posts. Ideally, she's already got Windows installed on her, so it should come right back up. We'll find out in just a moment. All right, so we got everything in there. Before we close her up, we're going to go ahead and power on there. I don't have a power light. What happened? I'll have to check that. Oh, yeah, I got a power light. And CPU fans running. These are always the heart-stopping moments with an AMD. And I have a failure. Okay, as it turns out, the reason why I have that is because I have to go through and run the setup. Does she? Oh, there she comes. And we are into the BIOS, ladies and gentlemen. So looks like she's going to work. So obviously you saw that it did come up. It worked. I I didn't know if it was going to or not, and then when I saw some of the indicator lights, I was a little bit worried, but AMD kind of does that when you first turn it on the first time after swapping out the CPU or something major or clearing the CMOS. It gives you those, you know, like 30 to 45 breathtaking seconds before it finally does come up. But it did, and everything came up fine, and everything worked great. And in fact, I think I may have created a bit of a monster. I didn't run a whole lot of benchmarks. I just took a couple of synthetics just to kind of compare a few things. I went ahead and did Time Spy and Port Royal. With Time Spy, you can see that the original, with my editing rig, I'm sitting somewhere in the 9,000s. And well, that compares, it's a little bit higher than the configuration I've got in my gaming PC, which has a 3600X, and then with the 3060 in it right now. But then when I go to Port Royal, I go from the high fives up to 6511 for this configuration. So I think, yeah, I think I kind of created a monster in a little box, and I hope he doesn't get out. It's going to be fun taking this thing on the road with me, but I am going to have to get a better monitor because right now I'm constricted by the one that I take with me back and forth. I never needed anything more powerful or better than a 1080 monitor at 60 frames per second, and now I do. So what I will probably end up doing is, yeah, that will be my next investment. But this turned out quite a bit better than I thought. Now, the CPU score is a little bit better on the 3700X in some cases, but the GPU score more than makes up for it in the especially in Port Royal. It did a phenomenal job, and really happy. I'm very surprised with the build, very happy with the build, and it was kind of it was one of those things where it's like, you know what, let me try this, especially when I saw that 3060 Ti being as short as it was. I thought maybe if that's the same size as that 1660 and the cooling would still be okay, because that 1660 never heats up in there. Now I'll run a full set of tests and all that stuff, and we'll find out what the heat is. It's getting plenty of airflow, and this thing is working really well. So I'm pleasantly surprised. This is going to be a fun thing to take on the road with me. I'm probably even going to be able to do some heavier gaming than I thought, and some editing when I'm on the road. So that'll be really good, and a very nice surprise. So if you enjoyed the video, folks, go ahead and throw a thumbs up on it. If not, yeah, I get it. You can thumbs down, but let me know why. If this is something, you know, may be in a small form factor, if it's something you're thinking about or have tried or have done or have gotten similar results, let me know. I'll be interested to hear about it in the comments. But I was very surprised and very happy with the monster in the box there. So we are now going to designate this thing DD2 for Danny D2, and baby, she's back. This is going to be fun. Danny D is back, and with a vengeance. So that's all I got for right now, folks. Don't forget to visit me on the other socials. And until next time, I will see you later.